Hi and welcome to Two Wheels Better. The bike in front of me is a Suzuki TL1000, but I'm sure you recognise it. The bike that's famous, but perhaps for all the wrong reasons. But we've come here not only to test the bike, but we've come to Ron Williams' place at Maxton Engineering because we're going to talk about suspension as well. Well, this is the infamous or famous Suzuki TL1000 rear damper assembly. And very heavy it is as well, Ron. It's quite surprised me.
Yes, it is.
But look, it looks a nicely engineered piece of kit to me. So what's actually wrong with it? A lot of work went into this by the looks of it.
Well, it is beautifully made, but unfortunately, if you measure the damping that it produces, it's completely different than any other shock absorber we've ever tested, particularly on a motorcycle. And it's very difficult to modify and produce a graph, which we'll show you later, that to me is suitable for a bike. We've gone the conventional way, and we've gone for a more conventional damper.
Yeah, this is your, not so much a modification, this is a completely different kit.
This is a completely different kit, and all the parts to fit this we supply.
Losing some bits here, yeah.
And you can fit this on yourself, you don't need to be highly trained or anything. Yeah. And we send it to you fully adjusted for most people's requirements.
So do you make this from scratch then? The whole thing is yours?
Yes, we make most of it.
Yeah.
We make 90% of it. We have got some Coney bits and pieces in it because we're a Coney service centre. So we use some of the components.
What, the valving and that
Some
sort of
of the
stuff?
valving is Coney,
Yeah.
but all the major structure is made ourselves.
Now the different, I mean, anyone can recognise this as a sort of compression damper, and he's got two-way damping, hasn't he? Compression and
Yes.
and the extension. But this one works in the rotary way. There's a vane in there, isn't there?
Yes.
And it's likened to a door closer that we used to see in the old schoolrooms then, really.
Yes, it's very similar. It is a vane type.
Yeah.
And one of the problems is that if you measure the amount of oil that this flows for a given amount of stroke, it only flows approximately a third of the amount of oil that a conventional damper, will pass.
Right. Yeah.
So, to me, you've got a problem straight away in that
you haven't got the volume.
You haven't got the volume of oil to meter it,
yeah,
and for it to produce the shape that you require. This shock absorber basically passes oil through a hole, an orifice,
yeah,
whereas this shock absorber passes oil through shims. And you get a nicer shape.
It's far more controllable. Now, something else, again, people are used to seeing shock absorbers with the spring on them. Suzuki unusual again, the damper assembly fits on one side of the frame, and the spring, which is normally a red one, but this is your special Maxton purple.
Yes,
is
yeah.
that a special colour of your own?
It is our company colour at the moment.
Yeah.
The idea is that if you want to go racing, or if you want to go to the next stage, you fit this spring on the other spring damper. It has to be modified slightly to fit it.
And what's the advantage of, why should anyone have a Maxton spring as well? What's wrong with the standard spring?
The way that the standard suspension is set up is that the rotary damper controls the way the suspension compresses, in our opinion, too violently, in that you're using compression damping where a spring should be actually controlling the suspension.
How much would this little lot cost you? As fitted on the bike, someone wheels a bike in and goes out. What are we talking about there?
Well, a standard kit, and that includes the suspension unit and the fitting kit, without the spring is £440 plus VAT.
Yeah.
The spring is another £40 plus VAT. The only other mods that we do really are to the forks.
You being an expert of old on frame geometry and all the rest of it, what is inherently wrong with the bike, do you think?
Well, it's as I was saying earlier, in that once you start to power on hard, because this bike is very powerful, very responsive, it's fuel injected, you get a lot of weight transfer towards the back of the bike. And obviously what it's doing is bouncing off the compression damping. Instead of the suspension compressing and taking it properly as it should, it's then kicking forward. It's bouncing basically off the tyre.
Yeah, it's sort of, the rear suspension is locking up then. Yeah.
And then it's bouncing forward because obviously the tyre's springing it back.
Right.
The tyre is taking some of the spring.
Now, as standard, the Suzuki's got a fairly steep steering angle. The forks are fairly steep, and you almost get the shopping trolley wobble that you get around the supermarket when the old casters go wobbling. But you've tackled this one, haven't you, Ron? with this rather trick bearing. What do we call this bearing here?
Well, it's like a tapered roller barrel bearing, and it means that basically we can use the original headstock in the frame, and we can offset with those bearings one way at the bottom and one way at the other, and in effect change the headstock angle.
Yeah, so you've left the frame as it is.
The frame is absolutely standard.
But then by, as you said, adjusting it eccentrically. So is it a new top yoke? And
yes, that's a new top yoke, but that's because we wanted to increase the top yoke offset, because standard it's quite shallow, and again it makes the bike very twitchy, and this bike was raced in the Isle of Man, so obviously we wanted to desensitise it just a little bit.
So what sort of difference? I mean, well, I know because I was reading up, 23.7 I think is the Suzuki spec, the fork angle.
Yes.
So what do you alter that to?
Well, we alter it exactly 1 degree.
I noticed another little gizmo you've got the other side there, the steering damper, and that's your own, isn't it?
Yes, this is really a racing steering damper.
Yeah.
And it's not really suitable for the road because even on the minimum setting it's got too much damping. But we prefer to mount the steering damper on the side, because it's more effective.
Is that an admission that it's still not quite right?
No, if this bike's been raced in the Isle of Man, and I don't know of any bike that could be run in the Isle of Man without a steering damper.
Well, when you've got a bike like the TL1000 and it's subject to some folklore, you can't beat talking to the real owner. With me, I've got Martin Bird, who is the real owner of the bike, and behind me is Mick Noblet, who's a TT racer of some repute. First, you, Martin. When did you actually buy your TL?
I bought the bike shortly after the show at the NEC. I fell in love with it immediately. Such a gorgeous looking bike. I took it home and carried on from there.
And when did you notice anything sort of peculiar with it?
I think initially I'd done about 500 gentle miles, and I was riding on a B road near Settle. The third gear, accelerating out of, say, 40 mile an hour towards 60 mile an hour, the front end lifted up, hit a few bumps first, front end lifted up, and it went in an almighty tank slapper. Kept the power on, and it did go away, but it made me start thinking.
Yeah. And how many instances did you have to have before you decided to get something done?
A couple of instances, and then to Ron Williams of Maxton Engineering, who we've used before.
Ah, right, okay. So Mick, you're also the development rider for this bike as well. Did you just take it straight to the Isle of Man?
No, I had one ride on the road, and on the smooth surface I felt it quite reasonable to ride.
Yeah.
But there was just one time I came out of a bend about 70 mile an hour and just gently opened the bike up, not viciously, and the front end just started shaking. I thought, well, this isn't a bike to take to the Isle of Man, because I'm not going at any great speed.
No.
So then we had to get in touch with Ron Williams, but we couldn't get in touch with Ron Williams on the phone because he had that much work, he wasn't taking any more work on. So we thought only way to do this is to go and see him.
Yeah.
So we came down to Ron Williams and we said, do you know anything about the TLs? And Ron Williams said, yes, they're a non-starter them. He said, well, I said, we're riding one in the Isle of Man. He said, well, it's a non-starter, forget it.
Yeah.
So, well, we've got it, can you not change the bike? I said, we've got this and this is what we've got. So he said, let me think about it and I'll let you know next week. So we rang him the following week and he said, yes, he said, fetch the bike in and I'll do my best for you before the Isle of Man, which he did for me. And we collected the bike to take to the Isle of Man.
And don't be modest, because at the end of the day you did all right, didn't you?
Yeah, in the Formula 1 I finished 25th,
Yeah.
which everybody said it just wouldn't go around the Isle of Man, and I got it round. So
Yeah. And what sort of lap speeds were you doing?
I lapped at 108 mile an hour.
As we're doing a feature slightly different to an ordinary bike test, looking at suspension and all the rest of it, I thought we'd get someone different in the shot as well. This is why young Paul's here. It's also why we've got Martin and Mick in the shot as well. So Paul, I know I got the advantage from you on this one. I picked the bike up from D&K, so I've done slightly more miles than you. But how did you find it? How was it for you?
How was it for me? Very good.
Yeah.
I like the bike. It's a fantastic bike.
Yeah.
I mean, mechanically it's brilliant, isn't it? I'm not a great fan of twin engines, but it's a lovely big thumping V-twin and it's brilliant. Yeah. It's superb. And I think had I not read all the bad reports about it, I don't think I would have immediately jumped on it and said, this is all wrong.
No.
I don't know, I think the trouble now is people are going on them with preconceived ideas, it's going to do this or it's going to do that.
That's right.
And I don't know.
No, I think you're exactly right, and what you said, I felt exactly the same. I thought, well, what's this going to do to me? But if I just got on it, I think what I did notice is not so much this sort of sophisticated rear end. I felt the rear suspension was stiff. The front did feel light.
It was very light. The front end is very light.
Over light. I mean, it's light compared with you know, my own bikes, but not particularly over light.
No, it was light. But I have to say, having ridden the other modified bike,
yeah,
mixed bike, the bike that Mick rides in the TT, it felt totally different. It did feel like a different bike. It felt somehow heavier at the front.
Yeah.
Because it's been modified back and front. The rake of the steering is different, but only by 1 degree.
Yeah.
But makes a tremendous difference. It just felt heavier, safer, more planted on the road.
Our advice to anyone though, it is a bike that you really ought to test ride first and feel satisfied in yourself that it's a bike for you. But Paul and I, being ordinary sort of everyday riders, we didn't have a problem with it. But then again, we're not going around the TT, are we? All right.
No chance.
Yes, there's going to be such an atmosphere here today at the World Superbike Championships, and by the time you watch this, you'll know exactly who's won. Will Foggy have regained his title? I don't know right now, but you know as you're watching. But I'm not here to take much interest in any of that, because I'm going to be down in the pit with V&M Honda following the day in the life of a racer, David Heel. The last time I was here, I was doing Yamaha's race day. And it was actually Alan Batson who was taking me around. Who were you taking around again?
Oh, various people. I can't remember the names, but I mean, we had several pupils that day, so yeah.
I know. Yeah, I was one of them. Oh, I wasn't terribly good, but this is like really where it's at. It's nice to be back, actually. Now, this is the pit. This is where it all goes on. It's sad to say that a lot of careers are made and broken by the bike. What do you think about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're only as good as your bike, really, to an extent. You know, there's so many things that can be right or be wrong with them. You've got, you know, your suspension, your brakes, your engine. You know, it's same as Formula One cars or anything like that. You know, it's a technical piece of equipment, and without that all gelling and being right on the day, especially at this level, you're not going to win. Things have got to be right. You know, with an athlete, he's just got himself and his trainers, and he runs down the track with no real excuse if he fails. But
oh no, correction. We're going to start getting the day when either gladiators or athletes are going to say, wrong rubber, wrong rubber. Listen, they weren't springy enough, okay? But you know, it must be heartbreaking. It must be quite a good out clause, actually, though, if you think you've ridden not too well and then there's a mechanical failure and it's kind of like, well, it was the bike.
Yeah, I think the guys know at the end of the day, it's no good in cheating yourself. You know whether you've ridden well or whether you've ridden bad. There's no point in covering that up, you know, but a lot of work's done here, and if it's not right, it's going to cause you problems on the day. But this is where it all happens.
This is where it all happens, though. Who's responsible for what goes on here, and what is everybody's responsibility? Can we get anyone's attention? Is that?
Yeah, Jack's hiding over there. We can.
Jack over there. Who's going to come? Jack, can we have you?
Jack's the team owner, the team boss. He's primarily the man in control, so I have to dob my cap every time.
What does that mean? Well, I mean, are you like God around here?
Well, I don't know about God, but yeah, I'm the team boss.
And so what does that imply? Do you have to do all the weighing up of the books and everything, as well as getting your hands dirty?
Yeah, initially I used to get my hands dirty, and as the team's grown, I'm just involved mainly on the administration side all the time, and chasing sponsorship and dealing with all the aggro what we get.
What do you prefer?
If I was absolutely honest, I prefer getting my hands dirty.
Let's speak to some of the chaps who are still getting their hands dirty.
This is John Sanderson. He's one of our mechanics. He's the youngest man on the team. He's just joined us full-time on the Superbike. And his job is to look after the mechanical side on the 750.
Right. John, let's ask, you must have such an enviable job with your mates. How did you get into it?
I went to college for a while, and I just decided to go down and have a word with Jack because I live sort of local, and I had a word with him and basically got the job and worked my way up terrain for a few years, and that was it. I landed the job last year, and so as a race mechanic, and just come to all the meetings, look after the 750 with Bill over there. So
There must be so many young guys out there being so envious of you right now. What have you had to do so far in the last couple of days?
Well, basically, we've had to sort of work with different suspension settings, tyres and what have you to get it to work basically the best for the weather and conditions and the track on the day. So it's just a matter of sort of trying different settings and tyres and whichever the rider fancies.
Right, so this is your first time here, is it?
I came about, was it 3 weeks ago? I think it was 3 weeks ago. We've had a British Championship meeting here, which was all okay. So it's the second time I've been here, but using a different circuit this time, a long circuit, so a bit different.
All right then, John, see you in a minute. Jack, do you want to come and take us over to someone else? David's just been left in the mists. Right, who have we got here?
This is Buffalo Bill Simpson from Scotland. He's the head mechanic on the 750 side. He's got years of experience behind him, and he looks after predominantly the chassis and suspension and getting everything handling really good on the track for the rider.
Okay, Bill, what were you doing earlier? Because I'd like to join in that job. You were sanding down someone's seat, weren't you?
Oh yes, the rider's always complaining about comfort on the bike, and we're just altering the seat padding a little bit. So
do you get some stick from the riders?
Loads all the time, yeah.
Who's the vilest?
Michael Rutter probably. He's always got the wisecracks.
But in those, is he violent? He's just funny, nice guy, or is there anybody who gets really vile under pressure?
No, not really. No, all the riders are pretty calm about things most of the time.
So what else are you going to be doing here today, or is it just literally whatever comes in you've got to deal with, or what's your main responsibility?
Yeah, my main responsibility is tyres and chassis, making the bike handle, stop, and making sure the tyres are working.
Making sure the bike stops. Brilliant. Who else is here that I've got to speak to before I go? There's John over there. How long have you been on the team?
4 and a bit years now. Yeah, 4 and a bit years I've been helping them.
So does it ever get you down, or is it something that you just love all the time and like wake up every morning and go, hey, show me to the pit again?
No, it gets us down pretty regular. We've had a very busy schedule since January, very busy. I think we've had about 3 weekends off since January, something like that.
Does it get really frustrating? Is there anything mechanical that you would love to change but sort of don't speak up and say anything about?
No, just a couple of the riders maybe, nothing mechanical.
This is Honda's production 900 Fireblade. Very different from the one you'd actually ride out from the showroom with. In what way?
Yeah, being a production class, it's pretty road-based, so all we can change really is we put an exhaust pipe on it, basically there. That's different from standard. We're allowed to change the internals of the front forks, but not actually the forks, just the internals, springs and oil and stuff like that. Brake pads, and then the rear suspension unit on the back, which is hidden away under your bum.
I'll take a look at that in a minute.
And the rear sprocket and tyres, which have got to be road-based.
Which you can get.
Yeah, we've got a steering damper on there as well, which is, I mean, a lot of people run them on the road anyway. That's really it, so it's pretty closely based to what you can run on the road. You know, it's.
I happen to have a husband though who completely wrote off a Fireblade a few weeks ago because the ground clearance isn't particularly brilliant. How are you coping with that? I mean, surely it must be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, we've got holes in the fairing and everything where we've been leaning the bike over and it's running out of ground clearance. But that's the joys of riding a road-based bike. It's not, specifically been designed to race. So you've got to overcome a few problems. I mean, we've jacked the whole bike up. We've dropped the forks through. We've lifted the back of the bike up. To try and compensate for that, but because we're getting, leant over so far around the corners, things are dragging on the ground. But that's all part of the fun.
What do you enjoy most?
Winning.
This is real drama here today. What's going on?
Basically, it's raining, and it's raining really hard, and everything's been delayed. And we've just heard that they've cancelled our race. So we've been here for 3 days, done all our practice, qualifying, etc., and now they've said you're not racing because we've run out of time.
What's going on out there at the moment, though? 'Cause it's good news.
The World Superbikes are roaring around, and my teammate Michael Rutter has just gone in front of Scott Russell for 4th place.
And he's great in the wet.
Yeah, he's going to win, so I'm going to sod my racing, go out there and watch my teammate smoke him.
Remember this? It's last year's Great Northern Bike Run at Oulton Park, and Two Wheels Better will be there again, this year on October the 5th. Whatever it is that turns you on in the bike world, there's something there for you. We've got 10 pairs of tickets to give away, so if you'd like the chance to join the thousands of bikers at this year's Great Northern Bike Run at Oulton Park, just tell us in which county is Oulton Park. Send your answers on a postcard to Two Wheels Better, Granada Television, Key Street, Manchester, M60 9EA.